Hello and welcome to News Now. 8 persons have now been confirmed to have died in the blast that occurred earlier today at a car park at a place called Muna, a satellite community in Maiduguri, Borno State, northeast Nigeria. According to the National Emergency Management Agency, 15 other persons were also killed in that blast. Now, the suicide bomber reportedly joined a cab before detonating the IED, killing herself and other occupants. According to the police public relations officer in Borno State, Victor Isuku, the ill-fated cab was about joining the convoy of hundreds of vehicles to be escorted by security operatives to the border town of Gambaru Ngala when the explosion occurred. Security operatives have since cordoned up the area while other residents are going on with their normal activities. At least 4 persons have been reportedly killed after angry youths attacked members of the Shiite group in Tudunwada area, local government area of Kaduna State, north central Nigeria. According to witnesses, the mob also demolished the Shiite Islamic school in the area. The incident occurred a day after a clampdown by Nigerian security forces prevent the Shiites from embarking on their planned annual procession. Witnesses say 5 people were also killed in Katsina and 2 in Sokoto State, while several vehicles were burnt during the incident. The Shiite group was last Friday declared an unlawful society by the Kaduna State government. According to the state government, the order was taken in the interest of public safety and to guarantee the rights and freedom of all persons in the state. The United Nations Children's Fund says a major health campaign is underway in the Lake Chad Basin area to vaccinate over 41 million children against polio. The organization in a statement said the population of people fleeing war zones is on the rise within the sub-region, raising concerns that the polio virus could spread across borders. It revealed that nearly 39,000 health workers were deployed across Nigeria, neighboring Chad, Niger, Cameroon, and the Central African Republic to deliver polio vaccines in high-risk areas. UNICEF says the third round of the current polio campaign will run from October 15 to 18, with additional rounds scheduled for November and December. The emergency meeting of the National Judicial Council, scheduled to discuss the arrest of some judges last week, is still going on in Abuja, the nation's capital. The meeting, which started on Tuesday, ended without members reaching any resolution. Members of the National Judicial Council have been discussing last week's arrest of some senior judges in the country, an event that has sharply divided opinion among the bar and the bench. Now, TV360 gathered that reaching a conclusion by the NJC is difficult, as evidences of corruption against the judges are being released every day by the DSS. Lawmakers in the Nigerian House of Representatives have passed a motion to summon the Director General of the Department of State Services, Lawan Daura, to appear before them. The lawmakers also constituted an ad hoc committee to investigate the clampdown, while the Senate, of course, condemned the raids but rejected a motion to summon the DSS boss. Nigeria's Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, has said the recent raid on the homes of some judges in the country was not an attack on the judiciary but a clampdown on corrupt judges. Speaking after the Federal Executive Council meeting on Wednesday, Mohammed maintained that the presidency reserved his highest respect for the institution of the judiciary as the third arm of government. He also insisted that the president is passionate about fighting corruption and would do all he can to ensure corruption is eradicated from the country, but would not do anything that is not within the ambit of the law. A group known as the Buhari Friends Organization Network says it supports the president in his fight against corruption in the country. The group, in a press briefing in Abuja on Tuesday, commended the president for the strides taken by his administration in the anti-corruption war. They also voiced their support for the recent raid on the homes of some judges by the DSS, saying that it is a step in the right direction.
The issue of corruption being seen in Nigeria as the cheapest means to get rich quick by public servants, politicians, and governors, it has really become a serious social problem. Therefore, the only solution available is a collective fight against these common economic saboteurs for all Nigerians, as Mr. President and indeed the government alone cannot do much to eradicate it. This debate culture must have to give way. Otherwise, it will take the country so much far behind the Committee of Developing Nations. Another negative development we have also noticed is the recent corruption searchlight beam on the judiciary, an arm of government that's supposed to complement the executive in the prosecution of the vulnerable corrupt public officers who have been found wanting. Yet this arm of government has been so uncooperative for years, therefore has made most known corrupt officials, including elected leaders, to continue in the economic sabotage, even with brazen impunity, as the judiciary usually compromised, thus making punishment for corruption a very difficult task. It is even more alarming to hear that the Nigerian Bar Association, NBA, which rather supposed to join the government in the campaign against corruption among judicial officers, are joining issues and supporting the judiciary in their traditional position of being passive and indeed fully involved in monumental corruption with perceived culture of impunity and so-called judicial impunity or immunity. As far as we are concerned, we are indeed very supportive of the efforts of the anti-corruption agencies, especially the recent efforts and arrests carried out by the Department of the State Security Service, DSS.
President Muhammadu Buhari is scheduled to embark on an official visit to Germany from October 13 to 15, 2006. A statement from the presidency on Wednesday says Buhari will be meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel to discuss issues bordering on security, situation of the IDPs and economic relations. Buhari is also scheduled to meet with the German President Joachim Gauck and the Nigerian community in Germany. He will also participate in a business forum in Berlin with leading German companies already active in Nigeria and other prospective investors. The House of Representatives has passed for second reading an amendment to the Nigerian National Merit Award Act, which seeks to strip recipients of the awards if they have been convicted of a criminal offense. The bill passed second reading after a voice vote during plenary on Wednesday. Sponsor of the bill, Ayodele Oladimeji, said he was proposing the amendment in a bid to strengthen the anti-corruption war being fought by the Buhari administration. The Senate on Tuesday confirmed the nomination of Senator Victor Ndoma-Egba as chairman of the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) and Nsima Udo Ekere as managing director of the commission. However, the lawmakers rejected 3 other persons who were nominated for the board of directors on the grounds that their nomination contravened the NDDC Act of 2007. The rejected nominees are Olatokunbo Ajashin of Ondo State, Donatus Eyinna of Abia State, and Igo Weli of River State. The act actually stipulates that only persons from all producing communities could be appointed to such positions. The Nigerian police force says its officers have arrested some suspected kidnappers in a Sherry local government area of Lagos State, southwest Nigeria. In a statement, the police says the gang was apprehended following intelligence gathered during the rescue of some persons who were kidnapped by the suspects in Sherry. Operatives of the intelligence response team rescued the victims and arrested 4 of the kidnappers. Now, the suspects were arrested at different locations and have admitted to committing the crime. 4 pupils, a teacher and the vice principal of Lagos State's Junior Model College, Igbonla, Ekpe area of the state, who were kidnapped by gunmen 6 days ago, have regained their freedom. The 6 victims were freed around 11 p.m. on Tuesday. The Rapid Response Squad of the Lagos State Police Command confirmed the release on its Twitter page, saying the victims were all hale and hearty. The Nigerian Air Force has announced that the 8th edition of its games will hold in Katsina from October the 24th to 29th, 2006. The chairman of the NAV Games, Air Commodore Charles Ogonwe, disclosed this while speaking at a press briefing in Abuja. He says the scheduled events will help boost the physical fitness, development and mental well-being of the Nigerian Air Force personnel.
The 8th Nigerian Air Force Games, which is dubbed Katsina 2016, is scheduled to hold from 24th to 29th October 2016 in Katsina. The objectives of the game is to promote participation in sports activities towards improving personnel physical fitness and also foster esprit de corps amongst Nigerian Air Force personnel. Most importantly, the event is to serve as an avenue to select athletes that would represent the Nigerian Air Force in future championships. In addition to an excellent synthetic pitch, Katsina has outdoor and indoor sports facilities within the city. Besides, the National Youth Service Corps camp could accommodate all our athletes. Most importantly, the state government is quite willing to support the Nigerian Air Force towards successful hosting of the Games.
Well, when we come back, we'll be talking business, so continue to stay tuned to TV360.
The Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism, WSCIJ, invites professional Nigerian journalists and team of journalists, full or part-time, with stories published between the 4th of October 2015 and the 3rd of October 2016 to submit entries for the 11th Wole Soyinka Award for Investigative Reporting. Award categories include print, radio, television, photo, online, and editorial cartoon. Submission deadline Monday 24th October 2016 by 4 p.m. All entries to be submitted at the WSCIJ office, number 18A, Abiodun Shobanjo Street, off Latif Jakonde Road at Gidimbi, Ikeja, Lagos. For more information, please visit wscij.org or call 0908-251-5179. Investigative reporting is the vital force for the restoration of human dignity. Wole Soyinka.
Welcome back. The Central Bank of Nigeria has said all banks in the country have a strong capital base to weather the current economic crisis in the country. CBN's Director of Banking Supervision, Tokunbo Martins, also debunked a report by a Dubai-based international investment firm saying 7 Nigerian banks have serious capital adequacy ratio problem and would need to recapitalize. She said the report is false and should be discarded. Abiola Ismail has that report.
It was the 329th meeting of the Central Bank of Nigeria with heads of banks in the country. And this meeting is very crucial following a report by a Dubai-based international investment bank that 7 of the Nigerian banks are facing a serious cash crunch owing to size of their non-performing loans.
That report is false.
The report had also indicated that 2 of the banks could go into insolvency. But the CBN came forcefully after this to say the report is far from the true picture of the things in the country's banking industry.
They have very strong capital buffers. And I think I've said this thing repeatedly. Another thing that's important is that the banks have very huge capacity to generate income. So apart from the capital buffers that they already have, they also have capacity to generate income to also absorb those losses if they do arise. And then the loans are non-performing. Can they reperform? Yes, they will, because the underlying assets are still there and they are good.
With the country dealing with serious shortage of forex, the bank chiefs resolved to implement the law which stipulates a maximum withdrawal of foreign exchange not exceeding $50,000 per annum and the injection of idle pension funds into the system to stimulate economic activities and boost services.
We want members of the public to remember that that rule is in place. All your cards are linked to a particular BVN. Now that BVN is only allowed to withdraw $50,000. If people, a year per annum, if people continue to breach that rule, they will lose access to this money. In fact, they will lose access to the foreign exchange market entirely.
So we discussed how to improve supply of foreign exchange to our manufacturers. the lifeblood of this country, of our economy, so that they can continue to produce, so that they don't lay off, so they can also achieve, good cost, a good level of costing for the products that you and I all use. So it was a very fruitful meeting. We came to some decisions that we are confident will help this critical sector, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria.
The possibility of interfacing with the pension industry. We have had conversations in the past about how the country will leverage the huge resources that reside in the pension industry.
The meeting also resolved to release more forex to the manufacturing sector to save it from continuous downsizing, while banks agreed to take up 2 public schools in each of the 6 geopolitical zones for training on financial inclusion.
Now, it's not just the CBN that has been reacting to the report of that Dubai-based international investment firm that the Nigerian banking industry is facing severe cash crunch, with a number of them having serious capital adequacy ratio problem. All the 7 banks mentioned in the report have debunked it, saying it is not true and that they remain strong and meeting their obligations to their customers. Now, we spoke to the Chief Financial Officer of one of the 7 banks, Sterling Bank. Abubakar Suleiman says the bank does not have any challenge with its capital adequacy ratio and that its fundamentals remain very strong.
The starting point is to understand that the Nigerian banking system today still maintains 27.5% cash reserve requirement and a 30% liquidity ratio. So in terms of liquidity, the Nigerian banking system is actually exceptionally liquid. As proof of that, the central bank has used the open market operation in the past couple of months to mop up significant liquidity from the system. That has not been a source of pressure for the banks. I'm aware that a Dubai-based firm had released a report that suggested that the Nigerian banks would need to raise additional capital. But I think the report is not well informed, and I say that with all sense of responsibility. If you look at Nigerian banking system, the capital adequacy requirement or the ratio requirement for Nigerian bank is almost twice what is required in other jurisdictions. So international bank, for example, have to have 15% capital adequacy ratio plus 1. And in addition to that, they are also required to have 2% general loan loss provision. So in terms of adequacy of capital, that is more than twice the 8% that similar banks in many jurisdictions will have. Banks that operate within Nigeria, for example, are required to have 10%. If you consider the fact that in addition to that, they have to maintain another 2% general loan loss provision, even the minimum requirement alone is already in excess of 12%. Similar sized bank in other jurisdictions will have between 5 to 8% capital adequacy ratio. So the suggestion that Nigerian banks are under capital pressure to the extent that they would need to raise capital urgently is not true. What is true, however, is that as a result of the growth in loan book arising from the devaluation of the currency, the adequacy ratio, which was closer to 20%, is now in the mid-teens. So we now have capital adequacy ratio from between 11 to 16, 17% range. This is still very robust. And we must take this in the context of the fact that Nigerian banks have now implemented Basel II and some element of Basel III. So really, they don't require to have such high ratios. We would expect that their regulatory ratio should actually be tending down towards what is available in other jurisdictions. I think we are operating in an economic environment where we have seen 2 quarters of slowdown in growth. Effectively, we're in a recession. And so to that extent, 2016 is a difficult year for all operators in Nigeria. We don't expect profitability to be at the same level as 2015. But the banks are still profitable. They are not yet in losses. We have seen non-performing loan inch up a bit, but to a large extent, it is still within the sort of levels that we anticipated. And I speak not just for my bank, but for the Nigerian banking system. I think that we have weathered a storm, and we weathered it very well. Late last year, the federal government implemented the Treasury Single Account. This has been followed by a couple of other states in an attempt to improve transparency in government financing. That led to the withdrawal of about 3 trillion naira from the banking system. And this was paid without any difficulty by the banks. The banks were able to pay this and continue to move on with the businesses. In addition to that, we also saw a first half of the year where the budget came in quite late. We've also seen the government revenue across board, both federal and state, fall significantly from previous level. This all has impact on the economy, but I think the banks have weathered it quite well. The analysts that are on ground and the rating agencies that are on ground will not share in that report. Their perspective on the Nigerian economy and Nigerian banking system are a lot more optimistic than what you have referred to.
Now, a financial analyst with AfriInvest says no bank in Nigeria is undercapitalized as reported by the Dubai-based international investment firm. Abimbola Omotunde, a researcher with AfriInvest, an investment bank based in Lagos, says the current economic recession in the country may have affected the finances of some banks. This does not mean that the banking industry is going under. He says the central bank, though, needs to make available forex for the benefit of banks in the country.
It may seem a bit exaggerated to say Nigerian banks are going under. Definitely, there are lots of challenges in the industry, most notably rising non-performing loans, because the economy is quite challenged now. We are seeing scarcity of foreign currency, and we are also seeing recession in the economy. So that has led to a pile-up of non-performing loans in the industry to the tune of more than 10% of total industry loans. And at AfriInvest, we expect that by the end of the year, we may see non-performing loans rising to as high as 12.1%. Now, that's a problem. The second problem is linked to the exchange rate management of the Central Bank of Nigeria. We've been seeing lots of pressure on the domestic currency. Meanwhile, Nigerian banking industry, the sector players have lots of foreign currency denominated loans. So when you see depreciation in the currency, you're going to see a nominal expansion in their risk assets, for which they have to provide more capital, in order to meet up with the minimum regulatory capital adequacy ratio. So that's where the second pressure is coming from. From our own observation, the industry has up to 37%, of foreign currency denominated loans of the total industry loans in the industry. So when you start seeing the revaluation effects of these foreign currency loans, you find out that the banks now need much more capital in order to meet up with the minimum regulatory capital adequacy ratio. So that is where the pressure is really coming from in the industry. But we think that most of the banks in the industry are very, maybe not so much capitalized, but at least they are meeting up with the minimum capital adequacy ratio, although we suspect that a couple of them in the tier 2 space, maybe 2 or 3, we probably need to raise more capital in order to ensure that they continue to meet up with the regulatory minimum. But it's not yet a crisis, I think. The CBN has been very proactive in trying to ensure that they give the banks some allowance in order to be able to raise capital to shore up their capital base. But by and large, we think that the solution would be for the policy makers, both the fiscal and monetary, to try and harmonize their policies and resolve this FX dilemma to ensure that the industry does not probably reach the stage of a crisis.
Now, oil prices rose on Wednesday following increased hopes of a planned production cut by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries in November. International Brent crude oil futures were trading at $52.84 per barrel, while U.S. crude futures were at $51.09 a barrel. Oil price has recovered steadily since OPEC said last month that it would reduce production, with details to be ironed out at the cartel's November meeting, and such a deal would sure speed up the process of working off global oil inventories. South Africa's ruling party, African National Congress, ANC, will meet to discuss the future of Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan after he was summoned to court on fraud charges, a party spokesman said Wednesday. The announcement on Tuesday that Godhan would be prosecuted sparked investors' fears that he would also be sacked. Godhan has alleged that the case against him is politically motivated, while many analysts say he has been targeted by loyalists of President Jacob Zuma. Now, the finance minister has been a vocal opponent of corruption and excessive spending by Zuma's government, which has been hit by a series of graft scandals and slowing economic growth. President Barack Obama has condemned Donald Trump's recent remarks about women, saying they would be intolerable even for someone applying for a job at a 7-Eleven convenience store. At a rally supporting Hillary Clinton, Obama also urged senior Republicans to formally withdraw their endorsement of Trump as presidential candidate. The 2005 video released last Friday revealed Trump making lewd remarks about women. Now, nearly half of the 331 incumbent Republican senators, House members and governors have condemned the lewd remarks and about 10% have called for Trump to drop out of the race. To sports now, the chairman League Management Company, Shehu Diko, has described the latest attempt by policemen to arrest him as outrageous and had publicly and bad publicity for the national team. Two unidentified policemen in Mufti had attempted to arrest Diko at the Nnamdi Azikiwe airport on Sunday night on his way back from Zambia with the Super Eagles. Now, the policemen had fired shots into the air, threatening to shoot anybody who tried to stand on their way. Reacting to this development, Diko said it was a sad development and very outrageous. An arrest order was placed on Diko by a state high court in Jos for his failure to reinstate Giwa Football Club back into the top flight despite a court order on the matter. Milovan Rejovic has resigned as coach of the Algerian national team just a month before the country's crucial World Cup qualifier match against Nigeria. Rejovic was appointed as coach in August and had only taken charge of the team for 2 matches. His last match in charge was a 1-1 draw with Cameroon in their opening World Cup qualifier. The 62-year-old Serb met with the Algerian Football Federation President Mohamed Rouaroua on Tuesday to discuss the result, and his departure was announced shortly afterwards. Algeria's next 2018 World Cup qualifier is away to Nigeria on November the 12th. The president of the Russian Olympic Committee, Alexander Zhukov, has announced his resignation from the post. Zhukov's resignation comes after a torrid summer for the country's sports. The International Olympics Committee opted against a complete ban on Russia, deciding to leave the decision to individual sporting bodies. Zhukov, who was personally implicated, told President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday that he wished to focus on his position as first deputy speaker instead. Well, that's it on News Now for now. Thank you very much for watching. Continue to stay tuned to TV360.